For half a century, a single electric locomotive thundered at the heart of America's busiest rail corridor, quietly rewriting the rules of speed, endurance, and style. While rivals faded, this electric monster hauled presidents, soldiers, and millions of commuters, its streamlined shell forging a legend few machines could match. But the trials that crowned it champion and the high-stakes contest that produced it are mostly forgotten today. So, how did it rise to such dominance, and what secrets did its endurance conceal? By the early 1930s, the Pennsylvania Railroad faced a challenge that stretched the limits of its engineering imagination. The Northeast Corridor, stretching from New York to Washington, was the busiest, most demanding rail artery in the country. Passenger trains packed with business travelers and politicians, long mail and express consists, and a rising tide of commuter traffic all crowded the same tracks. Timetables grew tighter every year, with more trains running at higher speeds, and reliability was non-negotiable. But the locomotives pulling these trains were struggling to keep up. The PRR had invested heavily in electrification, stringing thousands of miles of catenary wire above the rails. Electric power promised clean, smoke-free operation through tunnels and city stations, and the ability to accelerate heavy trains faster than any steam engine. Yet, the first generation of electric locomotives, boxy, utilitarian machines like the P5A, had clear shortcomings. Their rigid frames and short wheelbases made them prone to rough riding at speed, and they were notorious for difficulties on tight curves and complex track work, especially in places like Sunnyside Yard or the approach to Penn Station. Derailments and maintenance headaches followed. Meanwhile, the corridor itself posed its own set of problems. The line was never a straight shot, with sharp curves, frequent crossovers, and crowded terminal approaches that demanded a locomotive that could not only run fast, but also track smoothly and safely through twisting, congested rail geometry. The weight of ever longer passenger trains pressed the limits of adhesion and braking. Engineers needed a machine that could deliver high horsepower, maintain 100 miles per hour over long stretches, and do it day in and day out without shaking itself or its passengers apart. In the railroad's planning offices, the pressure was on. Traffic density was reaching new heights, and the old equipment simply wasn't enough. The PRR's mechanical and electrical teams pored over blueprints, studied rival railroads' designs, and debated whether to stick with proven rigid frame concepts or try something more flexible and ambitious. The stakes were clear. Without a new kind of electric locomotive, the railroad risked falling behind competitors and letting down the millions who depended on its trains. The answer would have to be more than just powerful. It would need to be smooth, reliable, and able to master the Northeast Corridor's unique challenges. That pressure set the stage for a contest that would define American railroading for decades to come. Two machines stood ready at Claymont, Delaware in the fall of 1934, each promising to be the answer to the Pennsylvania Railroad's electrification gamble. The R1, built by Westinghouse, carried its 4/8 four-wheel arrangement on a single, rigid steel frame. The GG1, GE's contender, rolled in with two massive articulated frames, each supporting 4 powered axles, joined beneath a single body. Both prototypes dwarfed the old P5A electrics in power and speed, but the real test would come on the rails. Crews ran the locomotives through a battery of trials, accelerating heavy passenger consists, sprinting over the straightaways between Claymont and Newark, and crawling through the cramped curves and tangled crossovers near terminal yards. Stopwatch in hand, engineers tracked every second. Dynamometer cars recorded the force at the coupler, while maintenance teams inspected wheels and bearings after each run. The R1 thundered down the main line, showing its muscle in open country. But whenever the tracks twisted or the switches grew dense, trouble followed. On sharp curves, the R1's long, rigid wheelbase resisted the bend, fighting the rails and throwing up showers of sparks. In the maze of Sunnyside Yard, it struggled to thread the needle, sometimes hopping the rails, or binding so tightly that crews had to halt and realign the locomotive by hand. The GG1, with its articulated trucks, glided through the same obstacles. Its dual-frame suspension, engineers called it the dual tripod system, kept all 8 driving axles pressed firmly against the rails, even on uneven track. This even weight distribution translated into better traction, smoother motion, and less wear on both wheels and rails. On the stopwatch, both engines posted impressive times, but the GG1 consistently edged ahead in acceleration and maintained high speeds with less drama. In repeated runs, its ability to handle tight curves and complex track work made it the clear favorite among the test crews. After 10 weeks of head-to-head trials, the verdict was in. On November 17, 1934, the Pennsylvania Railroad placed an order for 57 production GG1 locomotives. The R1, despite its power, would remain a single prototype, relegated to regular service but never duplicated. The GG1's articulated design had proven itself, laying the mechanical foundation for nearly half a century of electric railroading on the Northeast Corridor. Raymond Loewy stepped onto the shop floor in 1934, and he saw not just a machine, but a canvas. The GG1 prototype, number 4800, stood there with its body stitched together by rows of rivets, a brute built for function, not form. Loewy, already famous for turning everyday products into icons, argued for something radical: weld the shell instead. Welding would erase the bumps and seams, giving the locomotive a smooth, continuous skin that looked as fast as it actually was. The production GG1s became the first major American locomotives to wear this kind of seamless, sculpted steel. Only the prototype, soon nicknamed Old Rivets, kept its original armor, forever set apart from the fleet that followed. Loewy's influence ran deeper than the bodywork. He refined the nose into a gentle curve, softened the cab windows, and stretched the lines of the locomotive so that even at rest it suggested motion. Then came the 5 gold pinstripes along the flanks, each one echoing the catenary wires above, pulling the eye forward and making the GG1 appear to surge ahead even when parked. The stripes were not just decoration. They became the signature of the Pennsylvania Railroad's electric era, soon copied onto other engines and even station signage. Brunswick green paint, deep and glossy, turned the GG1 into a rolling symbol of speed and prestige. Later, some wore Tuscan red for special passenger assignments, but the basic look, smooth skin, sweeping stripes, and a proud keystone on the nose remained unchanged. Every design decision served a purpose. The welded shell made the locomotive lighter and more resistant to corrosion. The flowing lines reduced wind resistance and gave the impression of effortless power. Loewy's styling did not just make the GG1 beautiful, it made it unforgettable. For generations, the silhouette became shorthand for American progress, a machine that looked as unstoppable as it ran. The GG1's appearance was not just about aesthetics. It was a promise of speed, reliability, and the future, all captured in steel and paint. Beneath the GG1's sculpted shell, an intricate system of wheels, motors, and wiring turned design into raw performance. The heart of the locomotive was its 480 plus 084 wheel arrangement, two sets of 4 powered axles, each mounted on a separate articulated truck. These twin frames, joined under a single body, allowed the GG1 to flex and pivot through tight curves that would have defeated a rigid locomotive of similar size. Each truck carried its own set of traction motors, 12 in total, all drawing power from the overhead catenary. Electricity entered through the pantograph and arced down to a massive step-down transformer mounted inside the body. From there, current was routed to the motors, each one turning a single axle, spreading the locomotive's 4,600 horsepower evenly across all 8 drivers. This even distribution of force, what Pennsylvania Railroad engineers called the dual tripod suspension, meant that every wheel pressed firmly against the rail, maximizing adhesion whether the train was sprinting at 100 miles per hour or crawling through a maze of switches. Articulation let the entire machine bend around sharp curves and crossovers, reducing both wheel and rail wear. The result was a locomotive that combined brute strength with an almost uncanny smoothness, able to accelerate a full-length passenger train to timetable speed in a matter of minutes and glide through terminal approaches without the lurches and groans that plagued older electrics. The GG1's power path was as direct as it was robust. High-voltage alternating current from the wire flowed through the pantograph into the transformer and out to the motors, with no complex gearboxes and no fragile linkages. Each powered axle contributed to both traction and braking, giving engineers precise control over heavy trains at speed. This system-level thinking made the GG1 not just fast, but reliable day after day, year after year. With its articulated trucks, all-axle drive, and 100 miles per hour rating, the locomotive set a new standard for what electric power could achieve on American rails. The GG1 was more than a machine. It was a solution, engineered from the inside out to conquer the Northeast Corridor's relentless demands. The GG1 made its public debut at the front of trains that defined American rail travel in the 1930s and 1940s. These were not just any runs, they were the pride of the Pennsylvania Railroad, with names like the Congressional Limited, the Senator, and the Broadway Limited shining in bold type on timetables and station boards. The Congressional, linking Washington and New York, became a rolling showcase for the GG1's speed and grace. 12 to 14 gleaming cars, each trimmed in polished stainless steel, swept past crowded platforms at speeds that rivaled the fastest trains in the world. Passengers settled into plush seats, glancing out broad windows as the landscape blurred by at nearly 100 miles per hour. For business travelers, politicians, and celebrities, this was more than transportation. It was a statement of modernity and power. Timetable performance mattered. The GG1's ability to accelerate heavy consists up to schedule, hold 100 miles per hour between stops, and glide through the complex trackwork of big city terminals, made it the natural choice for these flagship assignments. On the Broadway Limited, the Pennsylvania Railroad's premier New York to Chicago train, the GG1 handled the electrified stretch to Harrisburg, handing off to steam or diesel for the rest of the journey. In the corridor between New York, Philadelphia, and Washington, the GG1 became a daily sight, its Brunswick green shell and 5 gold stripes, a promise of punctuality and style. For thousands of riders, the hum of the motors and the flicker of catenary sparks out the window became part of the rhythm of business and leisure. The spectacle did not stop at the station. Trackside, children and rail fans gathered to watch the GG1 thunder past, its whistle echoing down city blocks and farmland alike. These trains were the face of the Pennsylvania Railroad, symbols of speed, reliability, and a kind of glamour that belonged to the golden age of American railroading. By December 1941, the Northeast Corridor became a military lifeline. The GG1 fleet, already the backbone of passenger service, now faced a new kind of duty, moving troops, equipment, and supplies at a pace the line had never seen. Schedules grew relentless. Trains loaded with soldiers rolled out of Washington and New York around the clock, sometimes 20 or more heavyweight cars behind a single locomotive. Crew rosters stretched thin as engineers and firemen swapped shifts with barely enough time for a quick meal before climbing back into the cab. There were no glamour assignments here, just the endless rhythm of orders, whistles, and the metallic hum of motors under load. On peak days, the Pennsylvania Railroad's electrified main line moved more than 100,000 passengers, many of them servicemen bound for ports or training camps. G1s pulled double and triple sections, with only minutes between arrivals and departures. Layovers shrank to the time it took to top off water, check bearings, and sweep out the cab. In wartime, the railroad's promise was simple: keep the trains moving, no matter the hour or the weather. Maintenance crews worked through the night, crawling under trucks with lanterns and grease guns, patching up worn shoes and battered couplers so each engine could roll out again before dawn. The numbers tell the story of endurance. Locomotive utilization soared. Some GG1s logged more than 15,000 miles a month, their odometers spinning as fast as the wheels. Engineers learned the art of power management, coaxing every bit of acceleration out of the 12 traction motors to keep heavy trains on schedule. For the men who worked these runs, the war years were a blur of long nights, cold coffee, and the ever-present vibration of steel on steel. The GG1, designed for speed and elegance, now proved itself as a workhorse, reliable, tireless, and utterly essential to the war effort. Paint began to peel. Numbers faded under layers of mismatched touch-ups, some done with whatever color happened to be left in the shop. By the late 1960s, the GG1s were running on borrowed time and borrowed parts. mechanics at Wilmington and Sunnyside learned to keep a fleet moving with less and less. When a transformer blew or a traction motor failed, the answer was often a slow walk down the line of sidelined engines, looking for something, anything, that could be swapped. One GG1 might give up a pantograph so another could make the morning rush. Another lost cab windows or headlight glass, its carcass left in the weeds, while its parts rolled up and down the corridor in other bodies. Shop crews developed a kind of pride in their craft. Night after night, they patched wiring with lengths of scavenged cable, hammered out dents, and jury-rigged relays. They worked with what they had, not what they wanted. The sound of impact wrenches and the smell of hot oil lingered long after midnight. For every unit that limped out of the shop, there was a story, a last-minute fix, a borrowed part, a gamble that the old monster would make it through one more day. The GG1s kept rolling, but the cracks, literal and figurative, were starting to show. By the dawn of the 1980s, the GG1's fate was sealed, not by mechanical failure, but by a new set of rules and realities. Inside each locomotive, the massive transformers and electrical gear were filled with PCB oil, a chemical once prized for its insulating properties, now known for its toxicity and environmental risk. In 1976, Congress passed the Toxic Substances Control Act, and by 1979, the Environmental Protection Agency had outlawed the production of PCBs and imposed strict controls on any equipment that still contained them. Suddenly, every GG1 became a rolling liability. Operators faced a stark choice: spend heavily to extract and replace the PCB-filled electrical equipment, or retire the fleet altogether. But the challenge didn't stop at hazardous materials. The GG1s had been engineered for the Pennsylvania Railroad's 25 Hz power system, a frequency that was rapidly disappearing as railroads and utilities shifted to the national 60 Hz standard. Retrofitting these old engines for the new current would have meant gutting their electrical systems at enormous cost. Maintenance bills kept climbing, and the numbers no longer added up. Regulators, accountants, and engineers all reached the same conclusion: the era of the GG1 had ended. By 1983, the last units rolled into the yards for good, their cabs silent, their pantographs lowered, victims of a world that had moved on. Steel giants like this once defined American progress. Today, only a handful survive, preserved more as relics than as blueprints. As railways debate electrification anew and cities seek greener transit, the lessons of durability and design endure. The line between nostalgia and necessity is thinner than it seems. Sometimes the past is not just remembered, it is waiting to be rebuilt. Share your own memories or hopes for Rail Below.